Oh, hello, everyone. We are here for the last episode of the Quantum series on the Cash Confident podcast. And today we're working on what I think is one of the most important and underrated skills in the ability to create, the ability to make that quantum leap, the ability to make the big shifts in your life. And this is, I don't know if skill is the right word, but it's for sure a muscle. It's for sure something that you get better at in time. And it is self trust. And I would go so far as to say self trust and also trust with life, trust in your ability to create. And when we don't have self trust, or when we don't have trust in life, what I notice happen is we will try to control. All right. We will get into the place of trying to have authority over what other people think or their actions or what they do. We try to control outcomes. We try to control the how of the way that life serves us our goals, right? Like the life serves us the circumstances. And in doing that, there's a tremendous amount of power wasted. And because we're not using our authority where we actually have authority, which is in our ability to choose our own thoughts, is our ability to move our own emotions, our ability to regulate our own nervous system, our ability to hold steady to our dreams. These are the places that we have authority. Where we don't have authority is how that comes, or the way that it looks, or what other people do. We don't have any authority there. And so oftentimes when clients are in a state of control, it's generally a huge power leak. We're going to talk about is self-trust. All right. So the first flavor of self-trust is the most like fundamental. It's mostly that your body and mind trust each other. Right. Now, this really does go both ways, but most of the time I think it's the the betrayal happens on the side of the mind towards the body. All right. So we want to take care of our body. And what this looks like for most of us is going to be eating when you're hungry, drinking when you're thirsty, peeing when you have to pee, getting up, going outside, looking at something beautiful, taking a walk if your body's asking for a walk, like doing the things that your body's asking for. Now, when this self-trust is broken, we're going to be like, oh, I can't have that piece of cake because I don't know, like whatever reason. And, obviously and sometimes we have to deny ourselves something to take care of ourselves. I want to point out, but more often I see women trying to control their appetite, like some more of a suppress their appetite. And it basically comes from the place of like, my body can't be trusted to tell me what it wants, you know? So that's the first flavor of trust. And then the mind can kind of override the body. It can kind of steamroll it a little bit. So this is one of the places where we want to trust ourselves. So when we want to thrive, our body has to know she's safe. And that means we have to act like we're safe, right? Which includes really simple things: eating, drinking, peeing, going for a walk, going outside, looking at something beautiful, like literally just dancing, singing, like having some things that like your body knows she's safe, right? Not sitting all day clickety clacking away on the computer, you know? All right. So then let's talk about creating emotional safety within ourselves. So when we don't know how to process our feelings, when we don't know how to move through our feelings, what ends up happening is those feelings get stuck in our energy field. So let's just say when we're kids, we don't learn how to be with our feelings. Let's say when we're kids, we get yelled at for crying, or we get sent to our room, or we get given a popsicle when we're sad, or, we get in trouble for giggling, or we get the super harsh, well, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. So most of us didn't learn how to be emotionally safe with ourselves because that was never modeled to us. And so what's really required here is that your body has the capacity to feel the feelings while your observer is witnessing this and doing that from a place of non-judgment. Right? Now, what happens here when you know that you've got you, when you know, well, if I send this pitch and it doesn't work, I'm going to be so disappointed. And I know that I can move that disappointment. I know that I can handle that disappointment. You'll have the ability to send the pitch knowing full well that you might end up drenched in a bucket of icicle disappointment. But if you know you've got you're going to be able to do it. Now, if you can't handle that disappointment because nobody's ever shown you how to do this, and if you have to be in that disappointment, you don't know how long you're going to be disappointed. And this would happen unconsciously. This isn't going to be like part of your internal monologue, very likely. What's going to happen is you're going to procrastinate. You're going to not send the pitch. You're going to get in your own way. Most of the fear that happens around business. Most of the fear actually that happens in relationships. Most of the fear that we have is actually just fear of sensation. And this comes from not trusting ourselves to hold our own emotions, right? Like if you're afraid of getting your heart broken, what is that? It's a sensation. Not to say that the situation wouldn't suck. That's not where I'm going with this. But if you know that you can handle a heartbreak, that frees you up to love fully and completely. If you know that you can handle being publicly criticized, well, you're going to have the ability to show up big online. If you know that you can handle the potential of a big loss, well, that means that you're going to be able to handle having big money, right? So when we can't handle our emotions, when we do not trust ourselves to be able to move those emotions out, this is where we get in our own way, all right? So that may look like resistance to the tasks that need to be done, procrastinating, forgetting your passwords, getting too busy, all sorts of flavors of resistance, right? Like that's really, really what this is going to look like, all right? And what this really stems from is when you don't know how to process your emotion and you can't get out of an uncomfortable sensation, those sensations will scare you. And that makes perfect sense. And so the next level of self-trust is that emotional range self-trust, all right? All right. The next aspect of self-trust that I want to talk about is the ability to trust your intuition. Well, let's talk about it like we have the mind and the gut, right? Or the mind and the heart, right? So our body is going to have communication. And the intuition, when you're doing a quantum leap, the intuition becomes really, really important because you're not taking a logical path. So like where your mind is going to be like A plus B equals C plus D. Like your mind knows how to work in the logical and the linear. When you start getting into the exponential growth, it doesn't make sense. Like you can make so much money or your growth can happen so fast that it makes no motherfucking sense. So when that happens, your mind is less useful because of what you're doing doesn't make sense. Now, when you're in the exponential growth, that's the place where your intuition becomes more important because what you're doing doesn't make sense. And this means that your mind has to trust that intuition, and that intuition has to trust your mind to be able to take the intuition and go with it. All right. So if we can't trust our intuition, very likely the quantum leap is going to be off the table for you. And that's not bad or wrong. I don't mean that to be shitty, but if you can't trust your intuition, chances are you're just not going to be able to achieve it. You'll have to go the linear path. You'll just have to work harder. The intuition, because what happens is our higher self can see the whole big picture. Think about it like this. It's almost like, how when you plan GPS, you put a destination in your GPS, and let's say you know how to get the first half of the way there. And the GPS says, no, don't get on the highway. Take the back road. And you're like, no, I know how to get like most of the way there. But then you get on the highway with your GPS off and then you run into all the traffic, right? So it's like the higher self can see the whole playing field where you in your car, you don't know what's happening on the highway. You don't know what's happening on the back roads. You don't know if a road is closed down. You don't know if there was a car accident. You don't know those things. But the GPS knows because it has all of this information. So when you can trust the GPS, which is like your intuition, then you're going to get to go speeding around the traffic jam. That's basically the way that it kind of looks. So, but it requires trust. And what's tricky about the intuition, I feel like if you're out of practice with listening to yourself that way, it does take practice. And your intuitive hits becomes more sensitive. Like your body's ability to hear and the nuance of intuition gets better as you follow your intuition. So if you're somebody who's never followed your intuition, what I would suggest is to start by going back to the times that you knew your intuition told you and you ignored it. And then you saw what happened, right? And when you'll be like, I knew that this was the wrong way to do it. I knew that there was a better way. And I didn't listen. So go back and see if you can remember what it feels like to have that intuition, and then see if you can remember what it feels like to override your intuition. And then you see the outcomes of that. So learning to trust your intuition. Again, I want to point out that being able to listen to your heart, connecting to your heart every day is going to be a prerequisite for this. And creating that sense of emotional safety is going to be really important, because if your energy field is all clogged up full of old emotions, the soft whisper of the intuition you may not be able to hear over the the buzz of all those old emotions. So That's the next part. All right. Then the fourth thing that we're going to talk about today is really about your ability to trust life. Now this is tricky because sometimes when we're creating, sometimes when we're growing things, something will look like it's not working and it will look frustrating and it will look upsetting, and we won't know until the situation is all the way unfolded that that was a redirection, or that was a good thing, or that was setting us up, or we were building the skill that we needed, or we needed to meet this person in this kind of way to have whatever interaction. So sometimes things will look like they're not working. Sometimes it will look frustrating. It will look like we're going the slow road. But basically, we have to trust life to unfold for us. So if we're saying, all right, this is what I want, it's not a question of, am I going to get it? Which is funny because that's the question that comes up, that interjects the doubt and uncertainty. That interjects like the muddiness to the whole creation. That's the risk of you not getting it comes in, which is funny. Life is funny like that. So if you trust life, so if you're like, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm creating, and you can know that like deep down in your bones, and then when it looks like it's not working, you're like, well, I don't know how this is working yet, but I know that it's working. Florence Scovel Shinn, who's like an old-timey metaphysics teacher, I think she was writing her books in like the 1920s, maybe a little bit later, but she came up with this concept called baptize it a success. Right. So she's like, when something looks like it's not your way, just call it a success. And what that does is it energetically keeps us on the same road. So we're just trusting, like, life knows what we want. The universe knows what we want. The situation's unfolding. If I need a redirection, if there's a better way to go, I'll take the redirection. If it looks like I'm running late, I'm going to trust that it's working. If the first deal doesn't come through, I'm going to just assume that it's because I needed the practice. I needed the practice and the better deal is on the way, right? Like, we have to learn how to trust life. And when we don't trust life, then we'll be getting a constant state of resistance and always trying to fix things. And again, the mind loves a fucking problem. The mind loves it. It wants a problem, a delay, an obstacle, a puzzle to solve. And so when we get into that problem consciousness and we start looking for all the problems, and this is a great place too, when life serves you something and it looks like it's not going your way, you're like, what's wrong with me? Do I have a mindset problem? And then we start digging around in our psyche for anything that could possibly be wrong with us, when really we could just trust life. That's not to say you don't have a problem in your psyche and you should never go digging for anything, but a lot of times we make a lot of problems that are not really problems just because we don't trust life, just because it looks like it's not working yet. Which is tricky. And here, let's also be gentle with ourselves. You know what I mean? Because sometimes life is hard and sometimes it does look like it's not working. And sometimes we do have to eat a real big disappointment shit sandwich, in our creation, and that's okay. And sometimes we have to lose things to realize that they never had power over us in the first place. So where I want to go with this is, when we're creating, where I want to set the expectation is, it does not mean that it's always going to be a super positive experience. Sometimes when we're creating, we will get our heart broken. We will be disappointed. We will lose money. We will lose relationships. All right. And that's part of it. It's just a funny thing is, sometimes I think when I'm coaching people, it's almost like they feel like if they have a negative experience that they're doing it wrong. And I'm like, no, that's not true. And there's no amount of coaching that I or anybody else could ever give you that would make your life only cupcakes, and unicorns and little roses. Like, sometimes the disappointment is part of the process. And sometimes we have to learn how to process these big feelings. Sometimes we have to, have an experience of loss to know that the money never had power over us anyways. So this is how we're going to wrap up. And self-trust is, it's a muscle. It's something that you have to work on. It's something that you gain in time. When you follow your commitments to yourself, when you do what you say you're going to do, when you take care of your body the way that she needs to be taken care of, when you can handle your emotions the way they need to be taken care of. This is what helps us to build the self-trust. When you can do the things that make no sense and just be like, I trust myself. I know that I'm working in the middle of the night and that seems weird, but the ideas are flowing. I'm going to be with it. I don't need to work this way or that way, right? Which often means that we're not judging ourselves, right? And so that's a big part of what gets in the way of self-trust. All right. So I love you so much, and I will talk to you next week, and we will get into the next part of our podcast. All right. Bye.